Hello everybody, it's Julia Laird with Senior Susie Stamps, and I'm glad you're here with me today. I have a fun project that I've been thinking about for quite a while. I belong to a group that does calendars, and everybody takes 1 month, and last year I took I think January, and this year I volunteered to do the cover for the calendar. When they get sent back to us, they'll have all 12 months and then some kind of a cover that goes with them. And let me show you what I got last year. This is the cover that I got, and I made the keeper. I think I did a video on that, but I'm not sure. We're going to make a keeper today, and the cover for the keeper for 2024 Calendar Club. I wanted to run through these again because this time of year I think folks are kind of thinking about Christmas, maybe. If you're smart, you're thinking about Christmas if you make your Christmas gifts. But at any rate, I think these would make wonderful little Christmas gifts for someone. And yeah, this is the one I did last year. And you could do all different kinds of calendar pages, and people would just enjoy them. So I thought I would bring that to your attention again, and we're going to make one of these today. It has a lot of different elements in it today, so this might be a long drawn out video. This concept for this cover came from this card I made earlier this week, and the frame is a scan and cut, and the little birdie is Stampin' Up! Punch, and then I scanned that onto my scan and cut so I could cut the white layer for the little bird. So that's kind of where I was going with for the card keeper, the calendar keeper. Let me show you what we're going to end up with today. It's something like this. Now, going through the elements, this is that same frame and the insert that Scan and Cut cuts all together at one time. This is, of course, the little bird punch from Stampin' Up! Without the little white backer. And I did the background. I went ahead and stamped the sentiment, "Do your thing," for the 3 other ones that I want to get done today. I need to make 13 total. So I had to get started. I'm just telling you. These are the original typed numbers, and I went through and blacked out the little white lines on all of them. If I had realized I had to do that, I would have chosen a different font, but lesson learned. This is a scanning mat, and it's specifically for scanning into the machine, not for cutting, and it has a white background. It's not sticky at all, and it has this nice cover that goes over the top of it, and then you just run it right through your machine to scan. Then you can manipulate it by size or quantity or whatever. So I've gone ahead and done my cut on just plain black cardstock, and I'll pull these off of here as I need them. Now, it's handy in the studio to have more than one of these little tacky mats for this reason, because if you're working on a big project like this and you need to control your stuff that you've got going on here, it's easier just to leave it stuck to your mat than try to keep up with it. But so this may take me several days to use, and I'm using my other mat to cut on. So hang on. So this is a cut off of the Scan and Cut. And this is the frame that I used. It's not marked with any brand. And I'm thinking this may have come out of a magazine card kit, one of the ones from the UK. But for the life of me, I'm drawing a blank on it. But I'm going to use this as a stamp rather than an embossing folder, which it is. And on this particular one, it doesn't matter which side you use, because they're just the reverse of the other. There's not a whole lot of difference between the emboss and deboss sides on these. But I'm just going to fill part of this with ink just by rubbing my ink pad back and forth on that in a surface large enough to cover my frame. Let me get a baby wipe. I've had ink on my hands all day today. And it's been fun, I have to say that. Now, I'm also going to do just a little tiny spritz, a light spray of water. And I'm going to hold my bottle upright and spray backed off a little bit so it's just a really fine mist. And then I'm going to put my frame in so that it's kind of running straight in the embossing folder, and close my inked side down to it. You don't want to put your frame down on top of your ink side because then you'll smear, but if you close the ink side down on top of the frame, then it works really well that way. And just give it a couple seconds for the ink to transfer. And there we go. And there's a couple of reasons why I did it this way. The last time I used this frame and actually embossed it, even though I spritzed it with a little bit of water, my paper cracked. And I didn't want these little things to go out with cracked paper on them, so I'm doing it this way instead. It does not have the actual texture, but it appears to. So there we go. There's that part of it. Now let's get to the stenciling part. And I'm using an A4 size stencil that I got from Amazon. I will leave a link below, but they're nice when you're doing a larger piece like this. I went through my colored paper stash and decided to use Tempting Turquoise out of the stash because I had quite a bit of it, and I happen to like that color a lot. So here's the first one that I did, and it has Tempting Turquoise, some Certainly Celery, and then some black ink added back into it. So that's what we're going to do today, and we're going to make that one and 2 more pulls. So I decided I wanted to have some extra texture today, rather than just using my brushes to put that down with, and I decided I would use some cling wrap just to put a little texture in. And that's all this is just saran or cling wrap or whatever you call it where you are. You could probably use like a little sandwich bag or a leftover bread bag or something like that. I just didn't want a solid image of ink. And I think this turns out pretty well. It just adds a little bit to the interest to me of trying to figure out how it was done. And I'm doing the flowers in blue. So let me get those done, and I'll be right back. Okay, I think I've got all the blue flowers done, maybe one more here. And you can see it's starting to be a lot more colorful now. But yet it's not a solid color through the stencil. I add just a little bit more, and then I'm going to switch off to my Certainly Celery color. And you can see now why I've had an inky day. Because there's been a lot of ink moving around in here. And I'm just going to kind of backfill in these spots here that are not flowered up with some green splotchy like ink. And if it overlaps a little bit, then that's okay too, because a lot of this piece is going to be covered up with the frame work on the cover. I hope you can see this well in the camera to tell how splotchy kind of it is. And I think when you see it pulled out, you'll notice the difference. Let's see if there's anything else. Okay, and now I'm going to take a little micro blender brush and put some black in around the centers of these flowers. And it doesn't have to be all neat and perfect at all, because this is a very forgiving technique. And we're just getting a little bit of contrast going. And I suspect that you probably have some stencils in your stash that you could be doing something like this with. And it could be on a smaller sized piece. I just needed to be able to have something to cut that will work with the 5x7. And these large stencils like this really work well to do that with. So let me get these black ones finished, and then we'll pull this first piece out and make our second and third pulls then. So hang on, I'll be right back. There, I think that's everything now that I need the ink for. Let me see if I can get this out without getting ink all over everything. I gotta get another baby wipe. Hang on. So I'm gonna pull this little piece of temporary tape that I've got here off. And then this will slip right out. And this is the first one that we've got so far. And then I'm going to spritz this down with some water. And do the second pull by just dropping my piece right down, my paper right down on top, and picking up that first little bit of loose ink. And there's this one. Isn't that pretty? Oh yes. And then we can do a third one. Where'd my spray bottle go? Okay, here we go. And it will have to be a little wetter, but that's all right, because I've got some already done that I did earlier this morning, and that's what we'll be using to make one of these card fronts with. And there's that one. And that came out just lovely, and it'll dry up just fine. So I'm going to set these aside and set this aside also. And I'm through with these for today, so I'm going to get rid of them. While those are setting off to the side, drying a little bit, even though we're not going to use them today, let's go ahead and make the actual keeper itself. I want to show you how to do that. And you'll need a scoreboard. This is a Martha Stewart scoreboard. I've had it for years, and I really, really like mine, so I can highly recommend it. This is a leather working tool. It's solid stainless steel, and it has a little ball point on it, and it works well for this heavy paper for me. Now I'm going to score this on the 11-inch side at 5 1/4. Five and a half, and 5 3/4. And then I'm going to turn it and score it at 7 1/4 and 7 1/2. And then I'm going to turn it again, and I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch in, which would be 10 1/2, and a 1/2 inch in on this side. And then I'm going to take this and shift it over to where it is between the two halves rather than the quarters, because it's just easier that way. So the score line is at 5 1/2 and 6 now, and I'm going to put a little dot at 5 and at 6 1/4 right there. And then I'm going to turn it where the turn-up scores here are to the right, and I'm going to measure down to 3 1/2 and put a little divot. And I'm going to get my ruler and put my little, this Tim Holtz ruler has a metal edge, and it also has some little holes for piercing on this side, and that's what I'm going to set right up in that mark at 3.5 is the little piercing holes, and make sure that my ruler's in the right place. And then I'm going to make a little divot over here next to the middle so that I know where to punch my holes, if that makes any sense. And that's all I was doing. You can probably see them right there, and they're at 3.5. Now I'm through with my scoreboard, and I'm going to get my scissors, and I'm going to trim these. And that little mark that I made at 1/2 inch, I'm going to trim that right down to the first score line. And I'm going to do the same over here. So I'm going to cut those little corners off. I have a use for those, so I'm not going to throw them away. And then I'm going to do the same on these other two. And in the center, I want to come up into the second score line and cut that section entirely out, so that it looks like that. And then this final little dog ear over here. There we go. Now, you may say, well, what are you going to do with these, Julia? Well, you know, I'm going to try to use them if I can. And I have a 3/8 inch circle punch, and that's what I'm going to make my little hole reinforcers out of these little tiny scrappy doos that we got going on here. And these little 1/2 inch cutouts work absolutely perfectly for that. And it doesn't matter if one side's just a tiny bit flat, because it needs to be flat anyway. Okay, now what I want to do is do my fold up, and I'll fold on the score lines. Let's see, mountain, valley, and then mountain again for the center. And then for the flaps that flip up, you do mountain, mountain. There, and so you end up with something that looks like this. And on these 4 little divots, then I'm going to put a drop of glue, and I'll probably get my head in the way. The calendars that come in will be based off of 5x7 format. Let's see, I think I'll need a little bit more glue on this spot here. I haven't run my mouth too long. And so I need to make sure that I get these little reinforcers over just as far as I possibly can, because I want to be able to punch the hole kind of right on the very edge, but I don't want them hanging over into the open spot there. There, give that just a second to dry, and then I'm going to get my We Are Memory Keepers punch. This is my Big Crocodile 2 punch, and I've got my hole punch on the smallest size, so that's what we're doing the punch with. And I'm going to punch just set back a little bit from the edge here. Not much, because I don't have much room to do that. There's one, and we're just going to punch all 4 of them based on those kind of little divots that I put in there. And if they're not exactly perfect, it's alright. They will be covered up with some twine. There. Now, see where that goes. And then I have some nice black and white twine here. It's a heavier weight twine. And for this particular size, I have been doing 24 inches of twine. And so you start on the outside and push through to the inside. And then you'll go to the outside in the center spine and come right back in again. You don't want to have any drag on these because it'll tear your paper. So make sure your hole is large enough for whatever you're putting through here. On the yellow one that I did earlier this year, I used some 1/4 inch ribbon and it worked really well. I'm going to poke that through. But I thought this black and white twine with this particular project would be just perfect. And then I'm going to fold them over and kind of even up my twine a little bit and not yank it through, but just kind of work it a little bit. There. And that keeper then, the calendars will go back in behind here and rest on this. And so that's the basic keeper that we're going to use. And I'm not going to trim these ends, even though they look a little frayed, because when you tie the bow on them, we may need every bit of that twine to do that with. Okay, now the next step is to cut the black. It's 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. And because this only goes to a little bit over 6, I'm going to put it on my grid mat down here and mark my 6 3/4 mark with a pencil. And then I'm going to put it back in my paper trimmer and trim to that mark. And there we go. So there's the first one. I want to cut one of these layers. And let's use this one. So that was 4 3/4. I want to make this one 4 1/2. And there's a little edge that needs to be cut off here. Just a little bit. There we go. So then I'm going to make this 4 1/2 by 6 1/2. And there we are. Now I'm going to put this on with some ATG tape runner and glue. And the reason I'm putting the glue on around the outside of the edge is to keep any peel back from happening, because these are going to be used every month for a year, and I want to make sure that this artwork doesn't start peeling back. So I'm going to use my art glitter glue and run a little line of glue just close to the edge, not on the edge, because I don't want it to seep out onto that black paper, but I do want to have it hold in good and tight. I'll check my little borders here, and I'll rub it from the back, and there we go. And it did seep out just a little bit there, so I'm going to take my fingernail and just kind of run that stuff right on off of there. I'm going to run around that outside edge and just make sure that that glue has really good contact, and that'll keep it from peeling back. And we'll do that same technique when we glue this onto the card keeper itself. Now we're going to put this up on the background, but I think the last time after I glued it down, I took my pen and drew around the outside of the frame, and honestly you really are challenged to kind of see that. So I think I'll go back to tried and true here and just add my little black edge. Now somebody told me that I wouldn't run off into my work if I did this from the back side, so I'm trying very hard to remember that little bit of advice that I really appreciated very much, because you know, the last time I think I did this, I flipped over and ruined my piece almost. But I don't want to do that today. But I do want to make sure that, yeah, so it shows up for the most part there. Maybe just a little bit here. There. That'll make it stand off the page just a little bit, because I am going to glue that flat down. And I'm using art glitter glue on this. And again, I'm going probably maybe 1/4 inch from the edge on both sides, the inside as well as the outside of this frame, because I don't want either side of it to pick up at all. And I guess that's probably a little closer than 1/4 inch actually. Okay. There we go. Somewhere over here in this mess, I have the little insert piece that goes in there. So let's work on that next. I need my little piece of saran wrap back. Let me get a piece. I'm going to use this stamp that I used on that original card. It is from Rubber Stampede, and it's called Winter Woods. Really nice stamp, and it does a great job on this kind of thing. And I want a piece of scratch paper. And then I'm going to get my Tempting Turquoise ink back. And I'm just kind of scrunching my paper a little, my cling wrap. I don't want it to be smooth. I want it to be kind of scrunchy a little bit. And I'm just going to do my sky. And bring it down kind of sort of where it needs to go. It doesn't have to be perfectly matching the image down below. And then I'm going to take my VersaFine Onyx Black ink and ink this stamp up really well, because I want it to have a really nice, good, crisp image. And again, I may get my head in the way because I have to get this kind of right down to the edge of this piece and figure out which trees I want to sacrifice on the sides. There we go. I'm going to let that set for just a second to pull as much ink off the rubber as I possibly can onto the paper, and then pull straight up. There we go. Now I have a piece of drywall tape that I thought would make a fun little addition to the grass on this piece, and that's what we're going to use with one of these little micro brushes, and do the detail on the grass that way, just because I think they're cool. I think this technique with drywall tape is just, it's just fun to use. It adds a little grid marks on your grass, which of course is weird, but you know, it just kind of adds to the piece a little bit, I think. There we go. Let's see how that looks. Yep, there we are. And now I want to add a little bird. I'm going back to my VersaFine. I forgot to do this bird the last time, and I had to stamp it when it was already on the card, and it didn't work it wasn't perfect, but it's okay if it's not perfect anyway. There we go. So now this is ready to go onto the card. I think I would like to have just a little tiny bit of ink right in there. There. That's perfect now. I'll move this off. This piece gets foamed up. Before I put that on there, though, I want to do a little fussy cut of my sentiment, "Do your thing." So let me cut that, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'll put that down with some art glitter glue, and then I'm going to foam up the back of this. And I'm going to hang this off just a little bit. And there we go. I'm going to foam the back of this up completely. Then I'm going to use my tweezers to set this down, but before I grab them. I'm going to put a little bit of art glitter glue on here just for some slippage in case I don't get it quite exactly where I want it. Because with as much foam tape as there is on this piece, you don't have much forgiveness on that at all. And there we are. Now I'm going to do my numbers, and what I want to do is to do the 2 and the 4 first on either ends, and I'm just putting little dots of glue on spots in here where it's weird shaped. So I'm going to do, what I'm looking at here is the bottom edge. I want to make sure the line of the 4 is straight, and it's kind of about a 3/8 of an inch in from the edge of that. Placement on these kind of things can be a little bit challenging, honestly, but I start at opposite ends on them and then work the middle in by kind of splitting the difference on those things. If that makes any sense, you'll see here in just a second. So the edge from here to here and the edge from here to there should be about the same. And then before I really press it in, I want to make sure my height spot is just about right, and that it's not cattywampus going on that way. You could put them all in askew, and then it wouldn't be so noticeable if one of them were off. And for heaven's sakes, you don't want to glue up the wrong side of your number. And this is the last one then. When I use this punch frequently, I punch the whole thing plus an extra wing. I just kind of like the second wing on my birds. I don't know why, but that's just the way of it. I'm going to go ahead and glue this down to directly to the page with a little divot, the little branch dipping down the way the frame is, and my little bird then will sit right on that frame. I'm going to put a little piece of foam tape on him, but I want to put his wings on first. He's going to go like this, and so his wings need to go like that. And I put the back wing on the back side, and the wing that's closest to you goes, of course, on the front side. And you don't have to glue the whole thing in, just give yourself some glue to glue it down with, and then I kind of offset them a little bit. And that's the way I like to do my birds. And then I'm going to put a little piece of foam tape on him, because this has foam on it. It's going to set on both sides there. And I'm going to put a little bit of glue up on his head so it'll grab onto that. And he gets a blue eye, a 3mm eye, down in there someplace. There. Now the one final thing that I want to do before I add this is add just a little bit of white line to the numbers, just for a little extra interest. And I'm going to add a little bit to him. There. And now we're ready to put this on the card. On the calendar carrier. Now I'd like to know in the comments, please, if you think this is something that you are going to do for a Christmas present for someone in your life. If you are, I wish you'd let me know, because I just think they're wonderful little gifts. Now I'm going to flatten this back out so that it doesn't come up and grab stuff here. And I'm going to use my tweezers and try to get my borders right. And there we go. And I'll rub that from the back. And that little card carrier, I keep calling them card carriers, that little calendar carrier is finished, and when it's delivered, it'll look like that. So there you go. I hope you've had fun today. I've enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments what you think. But we'll talk to you soon. Have a great week, y'all. Bye-bye.